How did you arrive at the decision? Because when I think about it in the moment, it sometimes seems like it's so hard to identify the priorities of how you should adjust the organization. What was that moment like where you all had to come to decide we're taking a new path? What was that like?
Well, I think that part of it was that my co-founder, a couple of our, well, basically all employees were all hands on deck, essentially as customer support people. And that's definitely a flag where you have to think through. Obviously, something is not scaling. The main thing that we saw in the numbers as well was that the capacity that we had for instructors versus students was starting to fill up. And that even when we had instructor capacity, our onboarding times started getting delayed by a couple days and then a week or more, which was definitely a suboptimal place to be at. And so, I think that folks started to feel it very viscerally because we literally had to serve as the customer support team. And at the same time, like the numbers that we were seeing and the user experience that we were looking at as well, like we started getting a couple more emails and things that those are the first signs that you're not scaling well. And so that was a big flag for us to figure out, like, hey, this is something that clearly from the number side we're not having issues with new people. It's really the current people that we work with or during the onboarding phase that's really the issue.
And the factor for preventing the team to scale to a higher volume is that um, mostly due to lack of automation, or this also involves inventing like new process, etc., inventing new tools.
A little bit of both. Some of it was definitely automation. For example, at the time, our matching tool was pretty rudimentary. Like there were few enough instructors where if you essentially filtered an instructor based on their availability, you could probably figure out, amongst a group of maybe 10 or so instructors who would be the best fit. And so at the time, our team personally knew every instructor as well. And so that kind of helped, ease things along. But during that time period, we had to manually check a lot of availabilities on instructors' calendars, which that did not scale. So a lot of the work was to pull in those availabilities, be able to match it with the student availabilities that came in as well. So that was a bit of automation as well. We had to rethink what was actually the best user experience as well. For example, initially we tried to promise that we could start students the next day if they wanted to. But what we were finding was that that was suboptimal because then you would essentially be matched with whatever instructor happened to be available. But some students who are female want a female instructor, or some students are a better personality fit with another instructor. And so we staggered out the timeline to onboard a new student because of that. And I think that was a tough decision to make because you obviously want to onboard new customers as fast as possible, but we kind of realized that the user experience was suboptimal if we did that. And so we made the decision to push out the start date, which also got our support team some more time to kind of get everything together, send the onboarding materials, etc. And then I think that some of the hardest scaling work that we did at the time as well was some of the monitoring that we did for classes. And so, I talked a lot about the onboarding issue, but at the time, and we still do this, by the way, we monitor that every student is online for their course, so that if they're missing from class or whatever the case is, we can send them a notification and let them know, hey, your instructor is waiting for you, etc. That system that we used to monitor the classes broke a couple times during this process. And so that was like a big infrastructure lift that a couple of our engineers worked on during that time to just make sure that, we could actually monitor that both the students and instructors were actually able to get onto their session from there too.